Greetings Virgo, and a warm welcome to your year 2024 Astrology and Horoscope forecast. This is for the Sun or the Ascendant. First up, I'm going to tell you how I'm going to structure the video. In October 2023, we have two eclipses. A solar eclipse, incredibly important, but also a lunar eclipse on the 28th. And the energy of these two reverberates for the following 6 months. So as we go into the new year, they're still very influential. So we need to explore those first of all. Then, as we enter year 2024, at that exact moment that the new year dawns, we can take a snapshot of where all the planets are and how they're interacting with one another. This solar return provides a lot of information about how your situation will unfold in the following 12 months. Now, there's two standouts on that event. The first is that your ruler Mercury is in a very sensitive zone, but also it's in a retrograde. So that's intriguing. The second is the moon is in your sign, in the sign of Virgo, but it's forging a beautiful link with Jupiter, the planet of growth, but also the sun in your 5th house. And that grand Earth trine can be particularly auspicious for you this year. But back to your ruler. So in year 2024, we're going to see 4 lots of Mercury retrogrades in fire signs with a repetition on Sagittarius. But also we're going to see briefly a retrograde in your sign, which is Earth, and that goes through August. In fact, to be honest, through July, August and September could be a time that will need some patience for your sign in particular. But in year 2023, all the Mercury retrogrades were in Earth signs, very much to do with resources. And of course, we did see a lot of contraction around resources and finances. And in year 2022, Mercury retrograde was all in water signs, very much about emotion. So this year, fire is the currency in terms of the element, and that of course can be to do with passion. But the year starts for you in a tender location, house 4. How you feel, where you live, who you live with, and how you live there. And ironically, by the end of the year, Mercury returns to that same position. So your home situation or your emotional situation is going to be an important ingredient of what I need to tell you. Then I'm going to share with you when Mercury goes direct, when Pluto relocates into the sign of Aquarius on its birthday on the 21st of January, very symbolically important. You're going to get some early opportunities around your love life if you're single this year. Exciting news to share with you about Venus's passage, but also in terms of your passion, which comes from Mars, because Mars is really going to be giving you a lot of opportunity to set your boundaries, but interact in a more combative way from the end of March. Now, because we do have another set of eclipse series unfolding this year, there is more emphasis across the 2nd and 8th house cusp. The 8th house is very much to do with our deep spiritual evolution, but it can also be to do with intimacy and long-term finance. And in that part of your situation, you do have the North Node and also Chiron, the wounded healer, but they're being augmented by a Mercury retrograde. In fact, Mercury your ruler is going to be in the sign of Aries for 10 weeks, your 8th house, from the 10th of March to the 15th of May. So you could find yourself grappling with a financial issue or a deep emotional issue in a big way through that part of the year. Then we have a little bit of a test with the lunar eclipse on the 25th of March, and then a very passionate solar eclipse on the 8th of April, close to that retreating Mercury retrograde. But I haven't told you yet about Jupiter, but I will be diving deep into that. Jupiter, the planet of luck, of optimism and growth, is in a very exciting part of your situation, all through the first 5 months of this year, but on the 23rd of May, there could be a real slice of fortune that drops for you. So I can't wait to share that with you. And then we also need to look at the role of Saturn, critical part of astrology in terms of boundaries, sometimes limitations, and also when Saturn slows down for its retrograde. And Saturn and Neptune do retain their place all year in your sector of relationships. So that's going to be interesting too. So much to share with you, Virgo. Please stay with me for more. I'd just like to share with you a very special opportunity. If you're watching this video in year 2023, you can order your year 2024 personal horoscope forecast based on your unique birth data, and I will prepare for you the rest of year 2023 free of charge. If you're ordering within year 2024, you will get a full 12 months from the exact time of your order. You will also, my special package, get 30% off and your character analysis report, your life roadmap. This will help you to understand the patterns that have repeated themselves in your situation, help you to seize upon the opportunities and get a much more intimate understanding of some of the challenges and how you can work with them future forwards in a more effective way. Please see beneath this video for more information. So Virgo, let's have a look at, first of all, those two eclipses which occur in October. The first of them, the solar eclipse on the 14th, is in the sign of Libra. Very much about charm, balance, relating, but it can also be about listening. But for you, in your overall zodiacal position, this is house 2. So this is a solar eclipse where you can set your intentions around an improvement in terms of your income, everyday money, house 2, but also you're going to want to relate to people. The second house can also be about our self-worth. So the conversations you have over the following 6 months, you're going to want to feel noted for your input. So in other words, recognised and respected, totally understandably. It's just that the lunar eclipse, which occurs on the 28th, is a different eclipse series and the last in this particular series across the axis of Scorpio and Taurus. And the lunar eclipse on the 28th is in Taurus in your 9th house, which can be about higher truths. So as you're coming into year 2024, if you feel there is a lack of acknowledgement for what you input, how hard you work, how productive you are, but also about your qualities, your worth, but also about relating into you, the Libran energy, and creating balance, that could be something that sees you much more exercise. So that energy in the sign of Taurus is where you've got the rebellious Uranus, and it will be there all year. You've also got the planet Jupiter, which is very much to do with higher spiritual beliefs. So you could find yourself becoming more outspoken if you feel unnourished and unrespected. So that Libran energy wants to feel a sense of fairness. So that can be a theme as you come into this new year. Now let's look at the snapshot of your overall chart as you enter 2024. And the most notable thing to say is the moon is in your sign. When the moon is in the first house, it gives us a greater desire to manifest our individuality. But of course the moon in Virgo can be quite precise. It can need an organised home life. Now of course all the archetypes for your sign say that you're a tidy-holic. It's not always true. I think Virgos need to feel that things work for them as individuals, and of course everyone's natal chart means that there are some commonalities, but there are some big differences as well. So for you, I feel having the moon in Virgo, however you like to lead your life, will make you a bit more mindful of expressing your individual needs around your feelings, which is what the moon's about, through the entirety of 24. The problem is that on the opposite side of the heavens is the rather strict and limiting and rather cold and detached energies of Saturn, and it's an almost exact opposition. So even if you do want to manifest what's rightly, as you see it, and purposefully important for you, the individual, you could encounter people this year who just seem not to get it. And if we go back to that mix of those two eclipses, Saturn's almost immediately challenging what those eclipses are wanting you to experience, which is basically respect. So Saturn could mean that in all sorts of relationships this year, things can feel cooler than ideal. And that could be frustrating. But you also need to be conscious that as much as planetary energy can create incoming vibes, we can also give those vibes out. So you need to be sure that you're not being really cool in terms of how you're relating to others too. Now, obviously, it's critically important that we understand the role of your ruling planet, Mercury, throughout this year. And as I mentioned, it's going to go through some fiery passages and retrogrades. And it starts the year in the fiery Sagittarius. But that's a mutable sign like yours, so it flexes, but it's in retrograde. But critically, it's just aligned to Mars. So Mercury in Sagittarius is in detriment in technical astrology. And Mars likes being in Sagittarius. It's very athletic. So this would be great if you do want to, put a fitness suite in your home, or, get a lot more active in some way around your your locality. So park run on a Saturday. That combination of Mars and Mercury would be ideal. But Mars is in its fall in the sign of Cancer, which is very fourth house, and that's where Mars is. And Mercury is not detrimented in the sign of Cancer, but its clarity and detachment is diluted by the emotion. Mars obviously does rule the water sign of Scorpio traditionally, but also the fire sign of Aries, which shares the commonality of the element fire with Sagittarius. So basically that fourth house position for Mars, for you, does stimulate some of the passion of Mars, and it can mean that the fourth house position of Mars can be quite reactive, can be triggered if it feels that other people are not kind of being as sensitive to fourth house as they could be. Also, Venus, right on your fourth house cusp, is in a square with the moon, which, as squares go, that's a very generous one, and it suggests that feeling comfortable in your home environment will be really important this year. And perhaps if you are wanting to get things done, do some kind of upgrade, have new bathroom or kitchen, and you have tradespeople in to help, Mars and Mercury make sense in your fourth house. But the chances are with Mercury retrograde, there could be some delays, and with Mars applying to Mercury, there can be some frustration because they're both in the fourth house. You could at times be prickly and defensive. Now, there is another strand of this scenario, because if you look up in house 7, not only is applying in an opposition to the moon, it is squaring to Venus. So whatever you want from your relationships this year, they could turn out to be cooler than your expectations are initially. Or, because Saturn's a very serious influence, it's a case of all or nothing for you. It's either really working and it's very committed, or if it's not working, the more perfectionist side of your nature could come out because of having the moon in your sign. But there's more. If you look at Neptune in your 7th house, that's been creating some mystique, some magic, but also some absolute confusion around your relationship since 2012. It's going to be moving in 2025 into Aries. It will go back into Pisces. So you are transitioning out eventually, but it can be, a very spiritual influence, and it can be very giving. The problem is it can be harder to maintain our boundaries. Now, Saturn's come along since March the 7th, 2023, and helped to beef up your boundaries around relationships, and you've probably been more unyielding and less bending than you have in the past, because basically Saturn's given you more determination to stick up for what's rightly good for you. But you'll see that Neptune at 2504 is squaring with both Mars and Mercury. And the problem with that is that Neptune, as I mentioned, can distort. So it can distort Mars. It's the trickster influence bar none, Mars square Neptune. So you could be relating into someone who seems to have the kind of qualities that you're looking for, but actually, a bit like a gas, you go to sort of feel if it's tangible, and it seems not be something that's really there. So in other words, that passionate embrace between Mars and Mercury is feisty, impatient, very sensitive, but could get upset by the rather nebulous and gassy energies of Neptune. So you could meet someone who seems very sensitive. They can tune into what you're wanting from all that fourth house of Venus, Mercury and Mars. But actually, when it comes to it, there's nothing of substance. Or if there is something of substance, Saturn, it's cool substance relating back to the moon position and also Venus. What do you take from this? Well, it really is to be uncompromising. It's really to accept that the journey that you're going through and have gone with Neptune has heightened your expectations many times since 2012 and left you feeling bitterly crushed and disappointed. And as I said, Saturn's come in and been the kind of bad cop, but actually it's a good cop in a way, because it's making you much more realistic, and more quickly you're seeing the patterns, and therefore removing yourself from a situation that you're just going to be wasting your time on. So whether it's relationships within your family, within your chosen relatives, whether it's to do with close friendships or romantic or even professional relationships, this is a year when I feel that you are going to be more outspoken about getting what you need in terms of respect. And that's a lot to do with that solar eclipse feeding into this year. But you must accept that with Mercury retrograde as the year begins, you could hear information, particularly with Neptune applying to it, that as you take it in, it's not necessarily going in exactly as it's meant. So you may have to try and slow down the reactionariness, I'm sorry, that's not a word, the reactive potential of Mercury conjunct Mars, with both of them in the tricky fourth house, Mercury in detriment and in retrograde, square into Neptune. So relationships this year, based on that alone, are going to require some patience, some boundaries, and some realism. But I'm now going to tell you why your solar return has an amazing component as well. And that is, if you look where the moon is in the first house, look where Jupiter is at 5 degrees 34 in the ninth. The ninth house is about travel, expansion. It's about big philosophies, faith. It's about enthusiasm. It is about excitement. It can be about variety. It's slowed down in Taurus, but it can be very positive for you. But it links back to the moon in a 120 degree trine, which is the best, most enabling planetary angle one can get. But they both relate back to the sun, just under 4 degrees, which is very close to a grand Earth trine. That's really terrific. So I've given you what can be the downside, but I'm telling you now what will be the upside. But what this triangle between the moon, Jupiter and the sun is doing is you must set your sights high for your big picture, but just when it comes to your emotional world and relationships, do not compromise. And then you won't waste time. You'll see it come in. You'll see the people or the situations emerging where you just think, no, I've been there, I've done that. I'm going to go with Saturn, trust Saturn to protect me, keep my boundaries like my gatekeeper, keep that really solid. And I got to keep pursuing new interest activities, travel, connecting with people who are fun, exciting, have a big view of the world, and that actually can be really encouraging for you this year. In every natal chart, we also need to look at the most northerly planet, and in this case it's the position of Uranus, and that's continuing to say to you, fight back against any constraints, limitations that take away your energy and your verve and your vibe. So that's an exciting set of earthy energies, but I should just say they're all cased in fire houses. So the moon's in house 1, it's about initiation. The sun's in house 5, about the demonstration of flair, passion and joy, fun, sociability. And 9 is all about the big picture, travel, higher truths, and they're all collaborating with one another really well. So you can spend this year getting involved in one sort of drama after another in terms of people not really being sensitive and nurturing and aware enough of what you need, or you can just see it quickly and move on to the next exciting opportunity. So that gives you a flavour of what your solar return is about. Now, of course, having Mercury retrograde at the start of the year, it's like, cheers, you really don't need that. But the great news is that on the 2nd of January, Mercury goes forwards. It doesn't come out of shadow straight away, I accept that. So there could still be some niggles, maybe to do with family politics over Christmas, that could still need to be unravelled. But there's lots of very encouraging things happening right at the start of this year for you. Now, we do have on the 21st of January, Pluto, the planet of change and transformation, moving back into the sign of Aquarius, where it was for just 11 weeks last year. It's particularly notable, this, because the 21st of January is actually Pluto's birthday. So it's not going to be in Aquarius for the whole of the year, but it is going to be in Aquarius through to the 2nd of September. Through to the 20th of November, it steps back into Capricorn in a brief retrograde and then ends the year back in your 6th house. But the interesting thing is that because of the purity side of your nature and the need to discriminate and to sift through what's really relevant and to find the things that are tangible and meaningful, it's all for very Virgoan processes, what Pluto's going to do is magnify that part of your nature for most of this year and for many years to come. And so that can be really exciting for you if you want to get fitter, if you want to learn more about nutrition, if you want to find different smaller but important ways to transform your life, because I would say it's a case of marginal gains. Your sign more than any other will understand what I mean, because you know that life is made up of lots of smaller elements that are all collaborating. You could say even atoms. It's not just the big picture. Although Jupiter is asking you to focus on the big picture along with Uranus this year, you know that going through the processes is very important, and to do it efficiently is important. But if you could find, say, 5 parts of your life that you could improve, say, 5%, that would mean, through the transformational energies of Pluto, that you'd end up with a 25% change in your whole situation, which could be quite radical and quite dramatic in how that plays out. So see Pluto's support in those terms. Now, the other thing to say is that with Venus moves into your 5th house. 5th house is very charismatic, and it moves there from the 23rd of January to the 17th of February. But it's also going to be moving through your 7th house of relating from the 12th of March to the 5th of April. So you get quite an early burst of opportunity in terms of how you relate to people. Now, in terms of your neat and raw desire to manifest something better on the relationship front, Mars is going to be giving you a lot of support from the 23rd of March through to the end of April. So you can see that these early parts of the year are very promising in terms of how you connect to others. But we do have, towards the end of February, a conjunction between the retreating North Node and also the position of Chiron, the wounded healer. This is going to give you a lot of food for thought around intimacy. sex, to be blunt, but also about where you can coexist, or where you can very deeply invest yourself emotionally or spiritually. Where we're most devoted is the 8th house. And if being close to someone is something that seemed elusive to you, there can be some healing that comes at the end of February. And you can see, because of the support of Venus in the 5th house, and then in the 7th house, and then Mars in your 7th house in this early part of the month, there's lots of opportunities to try to break down any resistance that maybe has existed within yourself. That said, of course, on that solar return, Saturn was right on the 7th house cusp. So you will have to perhaps make sure that you're working towards the person or the people who would really honour and value you in the way you really want. Saturn very much about a bit more traditionality, but also the caution means that can slow things down, but it means that if things do shape up, they can be that much more meaningful. But that brings us to the 25th of March, and we have a lunar eclipse, and this is the mirror of the solar eclipse which occurred in the middle of October. So this one's in your 2nd house, but this time it could bring up some pain if you don't feel that your financial situation is quite as you need, and maybe a little bit of a crisis or some tension. Maybe there's a situation where you feel you're contributing a lot. You don't necessarily want somebody to put exactly the same money in. That's not really the point. It's more about how committed they are with what they can give from their heart. And that may be an issue that does come up then, but we soon after that do have a solar eclipse, and that occurs in Aries, and it's on the 8th of April, and for you that is in your 8th house. So the 8th house, very much about transformations, can be about what makes way, but it can be about what is very deep and transformational. So the 8th house, in the practical prosaic sense, gives you an opportunity in the following 6 months to think about entrepreneurship, or about how you can marshal your long-term resources in quite a shrewd and canny way. Perhaps you're going to get some financial advice. If you're someone who does have a business idea, this could be a time when you really want to think about it seriously. However, Jupiter, the planet of growth, is, as I mentioned at in terms of the solar return, in a very positive position for you through to the 3rd week of May. But just before that, on the 23rd of May, it forges an exact conjunction with Venus. And that can be extremely lucky for you. I don't know if you're someone who enjoys a little flutter here and there. If you do, that could be something that's of interest to you. Jupiter is known as the greater benefit, Venus the lesser, but that's not to say that Venus can't be fortunate. But in the 9th house, there could be a connection to someone through a spiritual dimension, say a church, or perhaps it could be through a retreat, or it could be that you're in some kind of community where higher ideals are exchanged. It really is down to your choice around the things that inspire you. Going on a holiday at that time would also be really exciting, I feel, because your appreciation of local culture and history will really be enriched. If you're visiting museums, or you're going to an art gallery or show, or watching a band, really, really vivid stuff. Around about the 3rd week of May, that's very exciting. But then Jupiter powers its way into your sector of success, where it will be for the rest of the year. So that's really inspiring. Now, what about your personal new moon for this year? Well, it does come after a series of quite frustrating, potentially, Mercury transitions. What I would say to you, Virgo, is that through the months of July, August and September, it could feel a little frustrating, and it may feel, despite Jupiter being in that very big, ambitious and bold area, a case of one step forwards and two step back. And some of it could be some psychological stuff that maybe is coming up on the back of that big solar eclipse in the 8th house. The potential for a separation or a difference of opinion based on trust is really quite large, because from the 2nd of July to the 25th, Mercury, your ruler, goes through your 12th house. It's never a great, I mean, in the sign of Leo, Mercury is actually very vulnerable, it's very bubbly, it can be a bit inflexible, but for you, that's the 12th house. And it may seem that someone is aggravating your vulnerabilities, or is a bit distant, or you may not be so inclined to reach out and connect to people. And then it moves into your sign on the 25th of July, but then it goes retrograde on August the 5th. 13 days in August, Mercury retrograde, and then it moves back into your 12th house, even more challenging in a way. So you're trying to get something going, and then some self-doubts could cloud it, or someone's lack of support or encouragement, or maybe you want to separate yourself from something or someone that you're not quite getting. It eventually goes direct on August the 28th, but it's still in your 12th house. And then it comes back into your sign on the 9th of September, and then it's with you through to the 26th of September. So you can see it goes right through that period preceding the time of your personal new moon, which is September the 15th. But the great thing about your personal new moon this year is it's trine Uranus. So Uranus is, it's the free radical, if you like, of the zodiac. It's a bit unreconstructed, it's very rebellious, it's in your 9th house, and it is going to continue to try and push you to seek out the most authentic way of living your life, because it is about higher truths. In mythology, Uranus rules the sky, so for me it's very much about astrology, and because of the co-rulership of Aquarius, it is about the baptismal side of Aquarius, which is, the water bearer. So it's about trying to transmute the best part of ourselves, and the 9th house is very much about philosophy. So the fact that your new moon is encouraging you to be utterly authentically original and different over the next month is really exciting. Unfortunately, there is a lunar eclipse on the 18th, which is opposite your sun, and that's in the sign of Pisces. So this is the first of a new series, and when it's in Pisces, it is conjunct Neptune. So soon after your new moon, there is a challenge around a relationship matter. Maybe someone is being evasive, not giving you the information you need. And of course, this will go on to the end of the year. So you do need to be mindful of that. So although the new moon's great for doing what you need to do as an individual, someone may not be conforming to what you need in a relationship. So just be mindful of that. And of course, also, we will have Neptune and Saturn in your 7th house in retrogrades at that time. But that brings us back to the position of Mercury, which then returns, ironically, back into your 4th house of home, emotion and family on the 2nd of November, goes retrograde on the 26th, and goes forwards on the 15th of December, but it still ends the year in your 4th house, and it's only just coming out of shadow. So that muggy or murky uncertainty about where to live, how to live there, and who could rear itself again right at the end of this year. But I also want to tell you about Mars, because Mars is going to be moving into your 12th house as this year comes to a close, and it is going to go into a retrograde. So if a relationship is still not working as you want, I think it could be right until the end of the year that you're really pushing and probing, and then finally deciding that enough's enough, because Mars in the 12th house can be a very ragged, disruptive influence. It can bring up from the depths energies we don't necessarily want to look at, or even if we know about past traumas or difficulties and we've worked on them, Mars in the 12th house has a strange capability of re-triggering them. And remember, Mars is also on your ruler at the start of the year. So you can see there are some really complex energies this year, Virgo. So I'm just going to sum it up all again for you now. As you go into the new year, the Eclipse series is asking you to really value yourself, to ask that people respect your contribution, to see that you're fair, to be fair yourself and to listen, but you want to be heard. That's really important. The position of the lunar eclipse will make you more outspoken if you think things are really not fair. There's a lot of energy in your 4th house, which could see some big changes where you live this year. Good for upgrading a property, working from home, could make you more impatient and perhaps even a bit more intolerant. But information can get distorted because of Neptune, but you could encounter quite cool connections with people this year at times, which could be frustrating. However, the grand Earth trine gives you the opportunity to be very enterprising, and as long as you aim high and go to the people that really get you and avoid the people who don't, there's so much to go for this year. But with all those fire retrogrades in Mercury, the chances are you're going to have a lot of passion, but potentially quite a lot of frustration around resources. 4th house, home, emotional resources. The 8th house to do with pensions, property matters and so forth. And then the 12th house, very psychological in Leo. So emotional around resources, Mercury, but in a fiery way. So, and then we have the position of Chiron and the North Node, Mercury retrograde for those for that extended period in the 8th house, 10 weeks, and the solar eclipse. So a lot of transformation possible this year. So it's a massive year for you, to be honest. But the one thing this year gives you the opportunity to do is to be passionate. And I think that could be absolutely fantastic for you. But I feel it's really about your boundaries, but also staying available within your boundaries. Don't shut things down completely, because the 8th house there is saying stay available to being really close. Give it a chance, even if it feels a little fearful at times. It's been a real pleasure being with you. Wishing you all the best for year 2024. Please like, comment, share or subscribe.